Hello everyone, it's me again, the Anti-Fish, back to continue my development of my 3D Pokemon Voxel game. Now I know it's been a while since my last video in this series, but it's okay, because I finally finished my plans for everything I want in the game. That means I'm finally free to start making the game for all of you to, hopefully, play. Anywho. The character is probably the most important part to get right when making any game, as it's the main thing you'll be looking at for like 90% of the game. To do the modeling for my character, as well as every other object in the game, I'll be using Voxel. This nifty piece of software is basically the best thing ever if you need to do voxel modeling, so I'd say it's pretty good. So to start off with, you need to determine the size of the object you're modeling. In the Kanto remakes, all the graphics were 16-bit, meaning that all the sprites can be easily divided into 16 by 16 pixel chunks. For the most part. Apparently, the character sprite is 19 pixels tall, but I'll just ignore that. So, with a starting size of 16 by 16 by 16, this is what I was able to make. For this being the first model I ever made, I'm pretty proud of it. All we need to do now is slap it into a pre-prepared test scene, and that doesn't look right. If you notice where he's standing, the modern voxels don't line up with the pixels on the ground. Apparently, Voxel models have 10 voxels be the same size as an in-game unit, while the floor has 16 pixels. To fix this, we just need to rescale the model, using some pretty complicated math involving dividing the current voxel size by the desired number of. With that fixed, I think it's time to finally hit play. Right, yeah. After adding some basic functionality, because that's needed if you want to actually play the game, here is the result. We've got a camera that doesn't clip into the floor, and we can go on a walk. The animation here was made by adding two walking models for both left and right strides, and then cycling between left idle, right idle when the player moves. The walking models are also a voxel shorter than the idle one, which may not sound important to mention, but I'm proud of the effect it gives. As you can see, you also travel in tiles. That was done to keep the vibe of the old games, and I think it works really well. Now, if you wanted to play an eternal walking simulator, we'd be done here. But as it stands right now, walking around with nothing to do is kinda boring. So, we need some. Obstacles come in many shapes in Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. Luckily, their sizes are all the same, at some multiple of 16. To start with, I'll replace the ground with a picture of the original Pallet Town, so I know what objects I need to make and where to place them. I got this image from the Spider's resource, link in the description, so thank you Bob799 for your effort. With that done, I made models for the townhouses and the trees, and added them to the scene, as well as the fences, signs, mailboxes, Professor Oak's labs, and flowers. And with all that done, I'd say Pallet Town is looking pretty nice, and you can bump into things now, which is also pretty good. And with all that out of the way, we can finally move on to. Oh, right. Give me a second. So next up. What's a Pokemon game without being able to catch the adorable things anyway? And to be able to catch Pokemon, they need to exist in the first place. Before I modeled any, however, I set some ground rules. Firstly, I wanted each Pokemon to be scaled correctly relative to other Pokemon. Secondly, I wanted the Pokemon models to be higher resolution so you could see more detail. And thirdly, the scaling bit was easy. Pokemon DB has a height value listed in every Pokemon, so I just need to resize each model relative to each other. But the amount to scale that value by was harder to nail down. After a bit of finagling, I eventually landed on each meter of Pokemon height being equal to 40 voxels in Voxel size, then scaled down to 0.25 to get 1 meter of Pokemon height, equal to 1 unit of Unity space. Now that we have a model, we just need to spawn it in. Luckily for us, I have this pre-prepared Route 1 scene, complete with long grass for Pokemon to spawn in so we can encounter them. All we need to do is start the battle, switch Pokemon, paralyze, and throw a Pokeball. Ah, hey, a Pokemon can evolve. So this is usually the point where I go, anywho, and move on to the next section. But I'm not going to do that this time. Instead, I'm going to do some explaining. Explaining so important that it gets its own section. Astute observers among you may have noticed that there's quite a bit of development here that I haven't explained. Now, you may think that I just did some off camera, and you would be right, for the most part. Actually, all the development I've shown you so far has been fake, just an artistic representation of development that has occurred. But that development didn't start when I decided to make this video. In fact, this game came into being on one fateful day around 3 years ago, when I thought to myself, I wish there was a Pokemon game where you could catch all the Pokemon. And me, being a high school student with very shallow programming experience, did what anyone would do. Go to YouTube and search how to make Pokemon in Unity. It subsequently found the single best video series that has made this entire project possible in the first place. I cannot explain just how amazing this series truly is. It taught me about coroutines, state machines, serialized fields. You name it, I learned it from this tutorial. And if you're like I was, and have no clue what any of those things are, just know that they are very useful and important. A link to their channel is in the description. They also have a Patreon that I encourage you to donate to if possible, because they do some excellent work. Now that that's been explained, I'm gonna go over what I've done so far, as well as what I have left to do. And thankfully, I don't think I have too much left. I've done most of the game systems already, so as far as I can tell, all I need to do is finish the map and finish adding the Pokemon. But while I do that, in the meantime you can click on the itch.io link in the description and try the game out for yourself. It's still being developed, so there's bound to be some bugs or unintended behavior, so if that happens, just leave a comment explaining the situation and I'll try my best to fix it. Also, if you do play it, I wouldn't recommend getting attached to anything because your save will probably break if you update the game. Also, there's both a web version and a Windows download on the game page, but I'd still recommend downloading the game because the sensitivity is a bit off on the web version. Also, I may have updated the game by the time this video was uploaded, but if I haven't, then an update will be coming soon. For watching my video. Hopefully it won't take me a year to make the next one, but then again, I'm an Australian programming content creator, so I can't make any promises.